We're back in the war room to decide who won this week's Wednesday night war between AEW Dynamite and NXT. My name is Michael Valenti. Joining me is Ralph Valenti for the Squared Circle Psycho Babble. We'll start off with big news coming out of both shows. For AEW, it is that Cody Rhodes is back after a 5-week hiatus. And for NXT, we have a new number one contender for the NXT Championship, and that is Kyle O'Reilly. He wins the Gauntlet Eliminator after getting past Bronson Reed, Cameron Grimes, Kushida, and Timothy Thatcher. Ralph, which one of these two bit of news are you more surprised about?
I think I'm actually more surprised that Kyle O'Reilly is the number one contender. I got to say that going into that match, while I wasn't necessarily high on any of those individuals, because I really don't buy any of them as legitimate contenders to actually dethrone Balor as the champion, and I still don't think O'Reilly is going to beat him for the title. I thought the one that had the best chance at doing it was Thatcher, of winning that match, going on, facing Finn Balor. I felt like he was really the one that was going to do that. Kyle O'Reilly, I mean, he's been great in his role in Undisputed Era, mostly been utilized in tag team matches, but not necessarily really played a prominent role in the singles division. So him going on and facing Finn Balor in what is probably going to be the main event of the night, a takeover, that's surprising to me. I'm not necessarily disappointed because I think that that's certainly going to be a very good match. And he probably had one of his better outings last night. He's always very good in the ring, so not taking any credit away from him. And it's just surprising to see him go from somebody who never really competes in the singles division to all of a sudden main eventing and in that number one contender spot. Cody, it's not necessarily a big shock to me. We knew he was going to come back. The big question was when, and he's been away for 5 or 6 weeks now. So why not now?
Yeah, I think that Cody was a little bit more surprising just because we didn't really see it coming. The fact that, yes, he was injured. We knew he was going to come back. It was just a matter of when, not if. I just didn't think it would be this soon, especially with the rumors of him doing some show with Stephen Amell. He's taping this game show on TBS. So I thought his hiatus would have been a lot longer than it really ended up being. Maybe after the anniversary show, or show him up at the anniversary show itself. So that to me was a little surprising. As far as Kyle O'Reilly winning, I'm surprised, like you, that he won, especially because he's never been a singles competitor in NXT. Mostly a tag team guy. I know he's done single stuff outside of WWE, where he did stuff in New Japan Pro Wrestling. In fact, a lot of people were talking about his match with Kushida in the Best of Super Juniors a few years back. So he has been in singles competition. I thought out of these 5, it would have been Bronson Reed to take it, because they've pushed him so much over the summer that because he wasn't going to be the North American champion, I thought they would have catapulted him into the NXT championship scene. So that to me is the surprising part in all that, that if not O'Reilly, I thought it would have been Bronson Reed, but Timothy Thatcher also would have been a good selection there too. But
no love for Grimes, huh?
I like Cameron Grimes, but I think at his position right now, he's used as kind of like an upper mid-card jobber, which that's actually a thing, folks, where if he's someone below him on the card, he could beat them, but some of the higher stars, not yet. But I think his time will come eventually. I think he needs a run with the North American title first before heading into the NXT championship picture. But I love Cameron Grimes. I think I thought his facials last night and his work in the match was amazing in the Gauntlet Eliminator. He did really good in that match. But
yeah,
and I think this whole part of what we saw with Kyle O'Reilly is kind of my first key takeaway from this show. And for both shows, really, it's just the storytelling that we've gotten from both shows have really shown in these episodes, especially NXT. You have this tease of Undisputed Era splitting, where O'Reilly and Cole have acted more like faces, where Fish and Strong are heels. Tonight you see, or last night you see Kyle O'Reilly winning and Undisputed Era celebrating. So I think this is kind of what we saw yesteryear with Evolution, where Kyle O'Reilly might be Randy Orton. He might end up actually beating Finn Balor, get hoisted up, and Adam Cole does the thumb up, thumb down.
I could certainly see that happening. I as far as the, Kyle O'Reilly being this individual who is supposedly going to assume this role as like a main eventer or steal the shine and the attention from Adam Cole. I don't see him beating Finn Balor, but I do think that this is eventually going to lead to Kyle O'Reilly being kicked out of the Undisputed Era, which, I'm kind of open to that, because if they're going to set up a feud between Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly, I'm fine with that, because, one of the things we consistently talk about in this show is just the fact that the NXT roster is really kind of depleted, and so many guys have gone up to the main roster that they got to start to build some of those people back up. They really have done a good job with building up the women's division every single time somebody goes up to the main roster, but they got to start developing some of these upper mid carders or guys from even the tag division to be people that you're invested in and that are going to be there on a weekly basis, so they can go into that main event picture. So if that's what this is going to lead to, I'm fine with that, because I do think that Finn Balor and O'Reilly is going to be a really good match. I think it's going to surprise a lot of people.
I agree, but like I said, there was a lot of storytelling on both shows. NXT, you have the continuing story of Candice LaRae and Tegan Nox, where Candice LaRae takes out Nox before the Battle Royal. Inside the Battle Royal itself, you have Rhea Ripley and Raquel Gonzalez sharing eliminations before eliminating each other. As I mentioned, the Undisputed Era. Velveteen Dream causing Kushida in the Gauntlet Eliminator. But also on AEW Dynamite, there was some good storytelling there as well. I love how they continued this tease of a feud between MJF and Chris Jericho with that backstage interview where they were complimenting each other. And then they're like, so why did you call me a loser? But then both of them backtrack and said, no, I wasn't calling you a loser. I was calling the limo driver a loser. I was calling Tony Schiavone a loser. I thought that was a great little segment. And Eddie Kingston, that was great, because he goes from not being eliminated to now never tapping. So he's got two things now on his plate that he can talk about as why he deserves another chance for the AEW World Championship. I thought the storytelling on both shows was very good, and the progressing of storylines was amazing last night.
Yeah, and you know what? Not only that, but Eddie Kingston's promo, while, of course, one of the things that people are always going to point out is, look, he's taken more shots at WWE, but I didn't necessarily take it that way. Initially, I was like, okay, here we go again. This is going to be the same old promo. But when you think about it, it really wasn't. He's representing the guys that never necessarily made it to that big position, that big opportunity within the WWE. So he's meant to represent many of the people that are under AEW contract, because he's trying to say, look, Moxley, you're not the guy you're trying to portray yourself as. You're coming over from WWE. You're a sports entertainer who's trying to be that guy that you used to be, down on the indie scene, whether that was in, CZW or wherever it was. Because these two actually do have history together. So Eddie Kingston is really meant to be the guy that, whether he was actually ever offered a contract to WWE or not, I'm not really sure of, but he never decided to go up to the big leagues. He never decided to go up to WWE and become that sports entertainer that he's referring to. So, and they actually carried that over in their match. If you notice at the beginning of the match, when they're exchanging chops and going back and forth, there's actually a moment where Eddie Kingston stops and he looks at him and is like, oh yeah, see, there you are. You're starting to get back to your roots now, finally. Yeah. So I liked how that storytelling from the promo that he cut carried over into the match itself, which was, a gritty in your face. It's a typical Moxley match.
Right.
Very little mat wrestling while it had it, more or less out of the ring and all that other stuff.
True. And that Moxley versus Kingston match obviously was last minute. And another key takeaway that I want to bring in is the fact that both these shows had to do some pivoting because of recent outbreaks in both promotions. And I think they did a very good job with what they had to do. AEW, obviously, Kingston and Moxley for the World Championship, the brawl happening afterwards, I thought was very well executed. On NXT side, you have the tag team match, which you talk about Kingston possibly giving a shot to WWE. Well, not really. There could have been a shot for NXT on AEW for the explanation of how the number one contender for the tag team, the tag team champions would be decided, where Fandango's trying to explain it. Regal is like, I can't figure this out. It's too convoluted. The commentators are making fun of how this happens. So I think that was kind of a jab at how we got the Bucks versus Jurassic Express at All Out, or it was just Fandango trying to be hilarious and the pivot. Either way, the match itself was very, very good, despite the fact that none of these guys actually tagged with each other. They've faced each other in tag matches, but never tagged with each other. And they did a very good job regardless.
Yeah, and I think it really just speaks to the level of talent that NXT does actually have there. While, we talk about some of the feuds maybe being stale or not really having that much investment in it, when it comes down to it, you need to be able to count on the wrestlers to go out there and put on a good show.
Yep.
They need to go out there and they need to come across as professional athletes. If they're not going to come across as professional athletes, people aren't going to watch that because they're going to think that it's substandard. So just the fact that these guys were able to go out there, put on good matches despite not being actual tag team partners is really a testament to how good they actually are.
Right. I agree. So I already gave 2 of my 3 key takeaways. What's your first takeaway, Ralph?
My first takeaway, one of my biggest takeaways, was Miro looked bad in his debut. And not Miro himself, but the position that he was put in, I think, did not do him any favors. I don't think that match elevated anybody. I don't think that really did much for him. I think that the match itself was really clunky. And I think that they could have put him in a better match to really highlight what they should have been trying to highlight all along, that he's a monster.
Right.
He came out, he looks like $1 million. He looks like he's in really good shape. He's jacked to shit. So he looks like a guy that you're supposed to care about, and he looks like a guy that can be a dominant force to be reckoned with. And he's put in this match, or him and Kip, I should say, are put in this tag match that, in my opinion, way too many botches, really convoluted spots, went way, way, way too long. At one point, Miro tagged in around the 4-minute mark. He tags in, only to be tagged out in literally 3 seconds by Kip Sabian. So now not only are the fans kind of wanting to see Miro and get a taste of what he's going to be like in AEW, he tags in and then, he automatically tags right back out. Why not let Kip get beat up or whatever the case may be and eventually work Miro into the match later on when the fans are really, really hot and want to see it? I don't know why they decided to do that. The other thing I want to point on is this. So this is going back 3 weeks ago now, where I said that I felt like Chris Jericho and Hager had a far too competitive match with Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss. And a lot of people were commenting in our comment section saying like, oh, well, they're doing them a favor. They're letting them get their shit in. They're using this to elevate them. Okay, so we are now 2 weeks removed from this. Last week, they weren't even on the show. This week, they have another competitive match where they go out there and there's a ton of botches and the match just didn't come across well. So they lost again. So if they're 8-3, a majority of those wins, if not all of them, had to have happened on Dark. Am I wrong in saying that? Because I can't remember any legitimate wins.
They've been racking them up on Dark.
So knowing that they've all happened on Dark would lead me to believe that you're really not supposed to care about this tag team all that much. It's not like they're being featured on a weekly basis, getting big wins like the Young Bucks, like FTR, like Jurassic Express, whoever you want to call out. They're not going out there on a weekly basis. So me criticizing them in that spot specifically has nothing to do with me not liking Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss, and everything to do with the fact that they should just not be having competitive matches just for the sake of having competitive matches. Right. We had the same conversation going back when Kenny Omega had a meaningless competitive match against Alan Angels. And everybody said, well, they're going to use this to elevate Alan Angels. Where is he now? He's in the Dark Order, and I think he's like number 69 or some stupid shit like that. Nobody knows who he is.
He's 5. He's
6, 7, 8. Who the hell knows? Pi equals MC, whatever. Who gives a shit? But anyway, math is not my strong suit, so we don't need to get into that. But my main point is this. Look, if people are going to try to call out the fact that, they're going to use a competitive match to elevate somebody, you might want to try to elevate that tag team, because they're certainly not doing that with Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss. I think a better use of Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss would have been this. Have Miro come out, have him have a one-on-one match with Joey Janela, who takes great bumps. He sells really well. Let Miro and him have a 5-minute match where Miro can get his shit in and look good. And that would have done a hell of a lot more to elevate Miro, where this did nothing for anybody but make them look bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an overwhelming critique that I saw on social media, was this match was too long. There were botches. It just wasn't a good match. And I think there's a lot of promise in-ring wise for Sonny Kiss. I just see a lot of greenness with Sonny Kiss. Some people might not like the character in the ring. It's not the first time we've seen an androgynous wrestler. I mean, you've had Goldust, you have had Adrian Street. this is, another version of that. So I'm not even throwing that curveball in there that some people want to say, oh, he has no business in the ring because of that. Yeah, regardless, I think he just needs more in-ring time that maybe Dark would help him with. Putting him on national. It's hard when you got to hide the greenness. You got to attenuate the strengths and hide the weaknesses. And I don't think this really did a good job for anyone in the match, really, like you pointed out. So, but I will admit, while their show opened up with a very, mediocre match, I'm going to say the same for the Battle Royal on NXT. That Battle Royal was not good, in my opinion. You have like 20 people in there. 10 of them, you don't even know their name. And if they had a name, it was like a mononym, like Emily or Ellie or Catalina. And just to put over like 3 people, Raquel Gonzalez, Rhea Ripley, and Candice LaRae. Why not have a fatal 4-way match instead of just having this battle royal, which we saw like 6 months ago, the same thing. So both shows I thought started off very bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And even if they went to just decided to go with the fatal 4-way approach, you still could have ended up doing Raquel Gonzalez and Rhea Ripley after that and set that feud up, which, that feud's fine. I would have hoped that Mercedes Martinez stayed in NXT, but it looks like she's unfortunately, I don't know, maybe they'll call her cat litter or something like that in Retribution. Yeah. So unfortunately, she's one of the masked members. Am I wrong? She's in Retribution.
She is in Retribution. Yes, she is. Her and Mia
so we'll
Yim
call
are the
her
females.
kitty litter.
Okay. All right. What's your next takeaway, Ralph?
This is going to shock a lot of people, and it might shock you. My big takeaway for the week. No. I feel bad for Orange Cassidy.
Show's over, folks. Show's over. Sympathy for Orange.
I feel bad.
Sympathy for Orange Cassidy? No. Explain yourself.
Well, I'm going to use this as a moment to gloat a little bit. It's self-indulge in my wisdom and my predictions and the direction of one Orange Cassidy, because I remember going back right after All Out, right after that first Dynamite, I said, look, he has these 2 wins over Jericho. They're trying to present him as this more serious guy now. And mind you, I said that they were going to have to try to present him as a more serious guy and not necessarily the King of Sloth style like they presented him on the indie scene, because that's not going to work for the majority of the casual fan. It divides too much of the wrestling community fan base. Now, since having those wins, now 3 weeks removed, having those wins over Chris Jericho, which again, all of the fans, he's using it to elevate him. Where is the elevation? Where is the follow-up? Where is the capitalization on the wins with Chris Jericho? So after having that win in the Mimosa match, he now has a win over Angelico. We have not seen Angelico since that. Mind you, he's a tag team guy who's competing in the singles division. So everybody said, oh, okay, all right, well, we'll wait and see. Let's see what happens. Following week on Dynamite, he jumps out of the trunk of a car. He does not have a singles match. This week, he goes and competes for the TNT title and now has lost to a top-tier talent who I asked you this. I said, do you see him going out there and being one of the top-tier guys within the singles division after this win over Chris Jericho? We unanimously agreed, no, we don't see him at that point yet. So I ask you again, why have him go over Chris Jericho if they're not going to do anything with him? To this point, they have not done anything as they have not capitalized on that win over Chris Jericho. So I am just a little confused, and I might sympathize just a bit with Orange Cassidy. So I guess, long story short, I was right again.
Well, they did give him a TNT championship match, so it's not like there's no plans for him whatsoever. And he did have a good comeback sequence in the match. While most of the match he was getting beat up and, the Dark Order was interfering. So he didn't look the greatest. However, I don't think this necessarily buries him either. So let's not jump the gun and say, oh, Orange Cassidy's buried. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying either. But this match for what he did. And I actually like the play kicks in this sequence because Brody no-sold it and then just obliterated him with an attack. That's how that sequence should be done. Get the wrestler pissed off and then just have him get thrown around for 10 minutes. And that's what it did. I think that actually was very good. So maybe this leads Orange Cassidy to think, you know what? This is probably a bad idea. I should not do this anymore.
So I will challenge you on this point and this point alone. While I don't think there's no shame in losing to Brody Lee. There's certainly no shame in challenging for the TNT title and having him not win that,
Right.
But the argument, or the counter argument, I should say, to that would be this. He challenged for the title. They're probably not going to follow up on that with having him challenge for the title again, at least not anytime soon, because Cody's back.
Right.
We saw that promo from Brody Lee right after the match. We saw Cody's back. So that leaves him again. He off his feud with Jericho, or coming out of his feud with Jericho, he does not have a meaningful feud that they are trying to capitalize on with him after having those wins. So if they're going to use Chris Jericho or those wins against Chris Jericho to elevate him, that's fine, but don't let too much time go by before you actually try to do that. It doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And that's the point I was trying to make from the beginning. Okay, you had him beat Chris Jericho. Well, now what? Where is he going? Who is he feuding with? What is going to get him to that next level? And if he's not going to get to that next level, if you're not going to try to push him into that point where he's going to be a main eventer or upper mid-carder, why have him beat Chris Jericho? And have Chris Jericho look like a fool for that matter. So
right. And speaking of Jericho, that segment that we got with him and Matt Hardy and Private Party, that might have been the worst segment of the night. That was not a good segment with Chris Jericho last night. I mean, it felt like Hardy, he didn't seem all into it. Jericho felt like he was mangling in. Private Party, yes, they did their best, but obviously they got to work on their mic skills. Not a good segment at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I was just confused because, again, didn't 2 weeks ago Matt Hardy come out and say, I'm going to take some time off, go away, and I'll come back when I'm ready? And he's been on every episode of Dynamite since.
So well, he's not wrestling. He's healing
he's not
up.
Wrestling.
But either way, it just wasn't a good segment. But my last key takeaway from both shows, Ralph, is who is returning to NXT. So there's this video package talking about paper champions and teasing a return at TakeOver, which I believe is just called TakeOver 31 at this point. There's no little side subtitle yet, but who do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be a former NXT champion, a former women's champion? Who do you think so far?
I think that, so correct me if I'm wrong, Samoa Joe held the NXT championship twice.
Correct.
Is that right?
That is correct.
I think it's going to be Samoa Joe. And I think that because if you listen closely, even though the dialogue was a little kind of messed with the audio was messed with a little bit.
Yep.
I think they say something along the lines of the titles have been vacated or something for far too long, and I'm back to claim mine, or something along those lines.
Yep.
And Samoa Joe comes to mind. I don't know if it's going to be somebody debuting.
No, it won't be a debut. It's definitely a return.
I don't know.
It's definitely a return.
I think it's Samoa Joe.
Samoa Joe is one of the three that I have for returning NXT champion. The other two are Bobby Roode, which a lot of people have starting to talk on social media. Where's Bobby Roode? Where's Bobby Roode? The other one, we haven't seen him, it seems like, in a year and a half, 2 years. Bo Dallas. Bo Dallas at one point was the longest reigning NXT champion. Another guy that just did nothing in the main roster. Yes, he had his run with the B team, but Curtis Axel's gone. So where do you put Bo Dallas if he's still with the company and wants to be on TV? Maybe this is a new character change for him. And I mean, I think the only thing that makes me believe it could be Dallas is the person in this shot is a lot smaller than Bobby Roode and Samoa Joe. So I'm thinking maybe him. If it's a woman, if it's a former woman, Ember Moon. And that is if she's healed from her Achilles injury.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't, not that I'm against Bo Dallas and him being successful, because I don't want to say I don't want him to be successful in the company, but I think the last thing NXT needs right now is to bring somebody who failed or wasn't positioned correctly on the main roster and bring them back down to NXT to say, hey, you couldn't really necessarily make it on the main roster. We're going to bring you down to NXT to be a top guy. You know, they did that they kind of like doing that with Breezango right now, Tyler Breeze and
Fandango.
Fandango. So I don't know. Do we really need to see Bo Dallas and that if he's truly coming back to try and claim a title, do we really need to see Bo Dallas main eventing? I don't want to see that.
Maybe, but I mean, we'll find out a week from Sunday at TakeOver 31.
Yeah.
But last takeaway, Ralph?
My last takeaway would be FTR. I do like that little thing that they're going to try to do, that stipulation that they're adding in there, the 20 minutes of fame, I think they called it, the 20 minutes.
Brush of greatness.
Brush of greatness, yeah. I like that little stipulation that's added in there. Just adds to their arrogance and the fact that they're trying to come across as very cocky, like whoever we're going to challenge, we're going to pick the opponent and they're lucky to even be in the ring with us. So I like it. I think that, for some of these tag teams that work a quicker pace, this will give them the opportunity to work at that quicker pace because it's not necessarily a longer tag team match. There's a 20-minute time limit. If you don't beat us, we get the win. So I imagine that, some of these top tier tag teams, maybe some of the higher ranked tag teams will ultimately end up, losing in that situation without truly losing. So just adds to the arrogance of FTR. So I like that. I like where they're going with them.
I like the concept, and I think that's a great execution. I personally would like Tully to talk more because I don't think Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler are the best promos, and Tully obviously can talk a lot better than they can. So the more you could get Tully on the mic, I think the better it is for them. I do like Best Friends coming out saying, we're the number one contenders, let's go, and FTR walking out. Yes, it's a WWE move, but it works for FTR as heels. It works for them. Also play into that, we also have the tag team splitting up of Hangman Page and Kenny Omega, where Hangman is continuing to have singles matches, but Kenny is refusing to have tag matches with him, saying that he wants to be a singles man. So what do you think happens first? FTR drops the titles, or we see Kenny in a singles match? Because it seems like they're really prolonging Kenny's first singles match.
For the love of God, please put Kenny in a singles match so we can stop putting him on commentary, because that is not a good role for him. He's not, look, in New Japan Pro Wrestling, he cut a lot of really good promos and he was extremely charismatic. And that's where I want to see him. That's what I want to see from him.
Yep.
He is not good in that commentary role. I don't think. And
they don't
I
need
think
4 people on commentary either. They don't need 4 people on commentary. So I will agree with you on that. But before we decide which show is better this week, let's go over the ratings. They are out. This week, they were pretty much the same. AEW Dynamite did go down slightly to a 0.32 in the 18 to 49 demographic, which does beat NXT's 0.18, which was the same as last week. AEW was the same in the 50 plus, a 0.32 for them. NXT was up slightly with a 0.37 in the 50 plus. AEW Dynamite did lose total viewership a little bit to 835,000, while NXT went up slightly, 696,000 total viewers for that. So with that said, Ralph, which show do you think was better this week, AEW Dynamite or NXT?
I think Dynamite was good in the sense that it had some pretty good segments and surprises. I thought Cody coming back was certainly a good surprise. I think Brody Lee cut a fairly decent promo. I think the main event certainly delivered on Dynamite. I was let down by Miro's big debut match. I'm going to give the nod to NXT this week because I think it did more than enough to progress storylines. I like the surprise and intrigue of Kyle O'Reilly. And you know what? Honestly, between both shows, I felt like they had the best main event. I thought that match was awesome. I thought that the match itself to close the night on NXT was very well done and honestly surprised me. What you saw there was, again, some of the talent who isn't necessarily positioned as main event talent stepping up and delivering main event caliber a match. So I think NXT was the better show last night.
Right. I'm going to agree with you. I think the best match, though, went to AEW with Moxley and Kingston. I think the best newsworthy moment was Cody returning. But I think the fact that we had arguably the worst match of the two shows with Janela and Kiss versus Miro and Kip Sabian, and also the worst segment with the Matt Hardy Private Party Inner Circle segment. I think that really hindered the show. Now, both shows were very good and did great progressing storylines, but after the Battle Royal for NXT, I had no problems with the show. I think they flowed much better in their 2 hours than AEW did. But I think they had more peaks and valleys. NXT had more of a stability when it came to their 2 hours. So I'm going to agree with you this week, and it's going to go to NXT for me. But let us know in the comments which show you thought was better. Which show? Was it AEW Dynamite or NXT? Don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, SCPB Podcast. And to join the conversation, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications, and we'll talk to you on the next episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble.